Next on KPBS Evening Edition, new revelations into the impeachment investigation. What we are learning now about transcripts just released, the White House's involvement, and the public hearing about to take place. Plus, a rally over rights. What's changed since the passage of Prop 187 25 years ago? A new racing season begins at Del Mar, but after more horse deaths in California, how is the track focusing on safety?
Did you know that 50 years later, it'd still be an institution?
We couldn't see beyond the first year.
And a conversation with one of the creators of Sesame Street. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Friday, November 8th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Major developments in the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. The White House is preparing for this all to play out on live television with public hearings in Congress. And now we're getting new details on what's already been said behind closed doors. More now from reporter Daryl Forges.
With public hearings in the impeachment investigation just days away, House Democrats are releasing the transcripts from the depositions of key witnesses. Top White House Ukraine expert Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman says the hold on military aid to Ukraine, quote, came from the Chief of Staff's office, adding the reason was to ensure the assistance aligned with administration priorities. The acting Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, failed to appear at his scheduled deposition on Friday.
We wanted to hear whether he made the decision to withhold the aid or did the president order him to withhold the aid.
Speaking from the White House last month, Mulvaney confirmed Trump froze nearly $400 million in U.S. aid to Ukraine. He said it was done in part to pressure the country into investigating Democrats. He later denied admitting the quid pro quo.
The reality is that Republicans are trying to pin this on Mulvaney, arguing that the president may not have been involved. I don't believe that, but Mulvaney could clarify the president's role.
Mulvaney's lawyer says the White House directed his client not to be there, adding to a list of White House officials who defied subpoenas.
I don't want to give credibility to a corrupt witch hunt.
President Trump continues to deny any wrongdoing as he and lawmakers prepare for public hearings next week. Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
And the first public hearings are set for Wednesday. KPBS will have live coverage of the public impeachment hearings on all of our platforms. Today marks the 25th anniversary of the passage of Prop 187. It barred undocumented people in the state from receiving public benefits or attending public schools. While it never took effect, it ushered in a generation of immigrant activists that has transformed the state. This morning, local elected officials and community leaders gathered in Balboa Park. They satirically thanked ex-Governor Pete Wilson for his support for the measure. Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez explained the gesture.
Prop 187 inspired a whole group of activists to help register voters, help our family members become citizens and register to vote, and understood that political power mattered. And so you have a whole group of now active elected officials who really were motivated by that one proposition and this one man who used that proposition.
Prop 187 was controversial at the time, and its legacy continues to be felt across the country. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler spoke with activists about their work and how it's changed from Prop 187 to the age of DACA and Trump.
Itzel Maganda Chavez is 25, born the same year Prop 187 was passed. She's a DACA recipient from Mexico. To her, Proposition 187 is the world she entered, one where the lives of undocumented people has hung in the political balance.
I think there's remnants of it growing up undocumented in the border region because, I grew up fearing police. And if my mom was driving us to school, whatever, to the grocery store, I remember feeling significant fear if a police officer was behind us.
For Christian Ramirez, his political awakening took place during the fight over 187, when he was a freshman at San Diego State University. Growing up with family on both sides of the border in San Diego and Tijuana, he was shocked when 187 passed with a 2/3 majority.
I lived in a bubble. I thought that, my gosh, there's no way that this proposition is going to pass.
Ramirez, who now works for the labor union SEIU, is part of the generation that turned their shock into power. They sprang into action in the years following 187's passage to usher in California's DREAM Act, which gave undocumented students access to college. California also provided undocumented people with driver's licenses and severely limited the ways in which law enforcement could interact with immigration and customs enforcement. He says his generation found out that it had to build a larger movement to overcome the resentment of the immigrant community.
We learned that in order for us to be able to win, we had to have a strategy that allowed us to build broad coalitions and to employ every single means available to us to push for the kind of change that we are beginning to see in California now.
For Chavez, the Obama-era executive order that allowed her to live and work in the U.S. pushed her into activism. She now works as an organizer for the group Alliance San Diego in the hope that an organized community could avoid another Proposition 187 moment. At the same time, the Trump administration has folded some of Prop 187 into national policy.
I do think that if we want to get systematic change, right, it's not about who's in office. It's about, again, changing those structures that allowed politicians to make the moves that they're making.
Andrea Tecpoyo Tepale is another DACA recipient, and she's still a student at USD. She got to go to college thanks to California's DREAM Act. She didn't learn about Proposition 187 until she was a freshman in college, showing just how far this moment has receded in popular memory.
I didn't learn about it. I didn't realize or learn about Prop 187 until a couple of years ago.
Still, she's fighting essentially the same battle as the students who kicked off protests 25 years ago. Next week, the Supreme Court will hear arguments over the Trump administration's cancellation of the DACA program.
And when DACA was rescinded in 2017 on September 5th, I think that I had the normal reactions that any undocumented student would have, fear, anger, and I think that I was really frustrated and upset and sad. But my way of thinking was either I can continue to be sad and frustrated, or I can try and do something about it.
On Tuesday, Andrea will be leading campus protests against the cancellation of DACA, renewing a long tradition of activism that has achieved huge gains for immigrants in California in the 25 years since Proposition 187. At the same time, for many undocumented immigrants across the country, today is looking a lot like 1994. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
One of the most impactful lines of the 20th century, and tomorrow will mark 30 years since the Berlin Wall came down. It stood for 28 years as a physical and symbolic barrier for the German people, with democratic West Germany on one side and Soviet-controlled East Germany on the other. Today in Berlin, a statue of former President Ronald Reagan was unveiled, a tribute to his role in helping bring down the wall. Horse racing is back at Del Mar, with the health of horses a major issue. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says the new season is starting off much like the summer as horses continue to die at Santa Anita Park.
It's opening day at the racetrack, the fall racing season starting here in Del Mar, but all eyes are on the racetrack again as more horses are dying up at Santa Anita. Another horse went down at the Los Angeles area racetrack last week. This time it was in front of a national audience during a race at the Breeders' Cup. Mongolian Groom was the 37th horse death at the track in less than a year, sparking renewed calls to stop horse racing and again casting a shadow over Del Mar.
Shutting down a racetrack has some major impacts on a billion-dollar industry in this state.
Del Mar Thoroughbred Club's CEO Joe Harper says the industry has done a lot to minimize horse deaths, but they are a part of racing.
We have to now make everybody understand that we're never going to hit zero, just not going to happen.
Del Mar implemented several new safety measures before its summer racing season, including medication restrictions and closer monitoring of practices. That led to one of the safest seasons on record with 4 horse deaths during the summer.
The best thing about last summer was the safety record.
But for some, safety improvements are not cutting it.
I have no kudos for any racetrack, not even Del Mar.
Ellen Erickson regularly protests horse racing in Del Mar. She says one death is too many.
It's like Russian roulette. Every time that horse is shoved into the starting gate and that gate opens, like I almost get sick.
Erickson says she and others will be back again this season and every other one until racing is stopped.
It's not going to happen in 6 months, but it is going to happen in the next few years.
Harper says revenue was down in the summer and he expects the shorter fall season to see some impact, but still be successful.
It's good, it's profitable. I think it's just the right amount of time. It's 15 days of the best racing in the country.
The fall racing season runs now through December 1st. Also expected next month are the results of a state investigation into horse deaths at Santa Anita. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A vigil will be held tonight for a murdered restaurant worker. She's been identified as 28-year-old Maribel Marino Ibanez. She was working her shift Wednesday night at Church's Chicken in Otay Mesa. Then around 5:30, police say a customer who had an argument with staff earlier in the day returned and shot 3 workers. The 2 others survived. The shooter has not yet been caught. Culture plays a big part in the way communities deal with death. The experience of local Vietnamese immigrants is the focus of a film playing at the San Diego Asian Film Festival. KPBS Peak City Heights reporter Ebony Monet has a look at mourning passing on El Cajon Boulevard.
I line the casket up with the Josh paper.
Julie Tran says there's symbolism in the paper she carefully lays into a casket.
And you bribe people to kind of not distract you so you can get to heaven.
Tran has been learning and practicing traditional Asian funerals for 20 years.
I've always been amazed by the industry. When doctors give up hope, you turn to the funeral director to fulfill your duties as a grandchild.
Tran's work as the general manager of Good Body Mortuary in San Diego City Heights is the subject of a short documentary featured in this year's San Diego Asian Film Festival.
I thought it was a joke, like, are you serious? Why me?
Filmmaker Quyen Nguyen-Le.
One of the reasons why I really wanted to do this film is because I have a personal fear as a second-generation Vietnamese American person that if my parents passed, I wouldn't know what to do. And that's like very terrifying to think about.
Tran says Asian funerals can be elaborate, and to conduct one, there's a lot you need to know.
Will you be able to do a casketing service? Would you be able to line the casket with Josh the way it should be lined? Would you know what kind of Josh paper to buy or what type of fruits? Because you have to have a certain color and types of fruits, and then in the superstition, like you can't have certain types of fruits.
The focus of the documentary shifted when Tran was tasked with planning her own father's funeral, whom she describes as her best friend.
So, as I was an arranger for his funeral, I felt I arranged my own funeral. I saw who loved me. I saw what culture meant more to me.
Mourning Passing on El Cajon Boulevard is one short film in a series called The Paradise We Are Looking For, commissioned by the Asian Film Festival to reflect the Asian American experience in San Diego.
I'm so blessed that someone invited me to be in a film that now is the best gift that I can give back to the people that helped at the funeral, to give to my mom, who now is that sole person that's my main focus, and to have a tribute to my father, who's like created everything. Best gift in the world.
The 2019 San Diego Asian Film Festival runs through November 16th with a special encore screening of The Paradise We Are Looking For on November 11th. Reporting in City Heights, Ebony Monet, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the latest impeachment transcripts link the acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, to a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Your outdoor plans will be safe this weekend because we have clear skies. Those are expected. Lauren Rainson has tonight's forecast.
There's just no rain in sight, not anytime soon. We're still getting that offshore breeze. We're remaining dry, not just through the weekend. Sun-filled sky, finding cooler temperatures along the coast there. Abnormally dry conditions to prevail as we're kicking off the new work and school week. This right here is going to be the game changer. Starting middle to the end of the week, the jet stream will become west to east oriented. That will translate to a more active weather pattern down to the surface. A shift southward in the track of that low will bring rain to central and northern California. Us in Southern California are going to have to wait a bit longer to get in on any of that rain. Tonight, we're clear with a low of 58. Some spots will dip into the 40s. If you have those late night plans, bundle up. We'll get back to all of that sunshine, warm temperatures, widespread highs in the 80s. Along the coast here, those comfortably mild temps, mid-lower 70s these next few days. Highs will bounce to the middle and upper 70s by Tuesday to Wednesday. Inland, of course, we always trend warmer. Hot Saturday, 90. Lower 80s Sunday to Monday. Middle 80s by Tuesday, continued sun. Into the mountains where we find the cooler air, widespread highs in the 60s under plenty of sunshine. At night, you'll dip into the 40s. The desert, we're also soaking in all that sunshine. Grab the shades, 90 on Saturday, very hot. Even through Sunday, high temperatures will flirt with 90, staying toasty. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Back to you.
We're here with SDSU marketing strategist and the co-founder of Bottom Line Marketing, Miro Kopik. Thanks for being with us, Miro.
Thanks, Maya.
Let's start with SeaWorld. Sergio Rivera, the new CEO, he is the fourth in 5 years. What can he bring to the table for SeaWorld?
You know, it's going to be very interesting because 3 of the 4 have been outside the theme park industry. And the last one, Gus Antorcha, lasted just 7 months. Sergio comes out of the hotel industry. He was with Starwood Hotels. He was with Marriott Timeshare most recently. And they bring a hospitality mindset, which is important in the theme park space. He also comes right at the time when SeaWorld just announced their quarterly earnings, and they weren't good. Visitor traffic was down, revenues were down, and compared to last year, they're down quite a bit. And so what SeaWorld has basically said is that in bringing him on, they want to make sure that the guest experience is great. And you know, they're really looking at reducing the animal shows. They're creating more an edutainment environment. The last thing is that most recently, which is where their pressure on SeaWorld, is TripAdvisor partnered with PETA to not sell any more tickets to SeaWorld on the TripAdvisor site. Doesn't impact a lot of sales, but it sends another symbolic message. And so SeaWorld really is threading the needle, and this guy has his work cut out for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Another story we've been following is the debate over short-term rentals here in San Diego. And one of the biggest platforms, of course, Airbnb, making some big changes. This after a Halloween night shooting that was deadly, and a house booked directly on their site. Tell us about what's happening with them.
Well, you know, the whole sharing economy, there's so many unintended consequences of consumer behavior. And the CEO, Brian Chesky, is really took matters in his hands. They want to make sure they verify all the listings, because a lot of times what's been happening is that people who actually rent a place arrive and it's not what's pictured. So they get frustrated, and so they're going to have 100% customer guarantee after they verify the listing, so you can get to a better house or you get your money back. There's going to be a 24/7 neighbor hotline, so there's that's staffed by real live people, so if there's ever an issue with a Airbnb rental, a neighbor can call in and things can be acted on. And lastly, they're going to do a manual review of all the listings to make sure the listings are legitimate. This is in advance of, you know, their desired public offering. Airbnb is one of the, you know, is a darling in the .com space, and they're really looking at making sure that their company is squeaky clean before going public. They don't want to have a situation like what just recently happened with WeWorks, where they didn't go public because a lot of things were uncovered about them.
And now let's talk about shopping. Of course, some stores are already having their Black Friday ads out. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the holiday shopping period is the mecca for retailers. During this time between November and the Christmas holiday, most retailers, 20% or more of their business is delivered during this last period of the year. And right now, Target, for example, is announcing kind of their pre-Black Friday sale this coming weekend on a national level. And this year, I want to warn consumers that the discounts are not going to be as deep as they were 3 or 4 years ago. You're going to see 20 to 30% discounts in most cases. But what Target is doing is if you buy $50 or more during this month, you get a coupon for 20% more between December 3rd and the 14th. And that's traditionally the time frame during the Christmas holidays season that sales kind of dip. So you get a big lift during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the week before Christmas, but that's kind of the quiet time, and so they want people to come back in their stores.
Mira Kopek with SDSU and Bottom Line Marketing, thank you so much.
Thanks, Maya.
What's behind the shocking level of violence in Mexico? Overlooked San Diego rape kits yield DNA matches, and why dockless scooters aren't as green as people might think. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
It's been a part of our lives now for half a century. We're talking about Sesame Street. The show's 50th anniversary is this weekend, and one of the co-founders of the Sesame Workshop lives here in San Diego. And he talked with KPBS Midday Edition co-host Jade Hindman.
Well, Mr. Morstad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Take us back to 1960 when you and your collaborators were creating what would become Sesame Street. Where did the idea come from?
The idea came from first a study to determine whether people thought television could be used to teach young children. Secondly, hiring a group of professionals that knew how to produce television. Third, getting the job done. We had to produce at that time 130 hours a year of television. We had to have people that knew what they were doing. And calling it Sesame Street, when you asked what the idea for Sesame Street was, calling it Sesame Street developed during the course of that process when the producers went away for a weekend seminar to try to figure out what they were going to call the program.
Mm-hmm. And how did you make that connection between teaching kids and the television?
At that time in the United States, there was a lot of discussion about the failure of many kids who went to school unprepared, either because they came from poor backgrounds or different kinds of families. And by the end of third grade, they entered first grade 3 months behind, and by third grade, they were a year behind. And there was a great discussion about how that gap could be overcome. I was then working at Carnegie Foundation, and we financed a number of experiments to try to see if you could inoculate children at an early age so that they would be able to succeed in school rather than failing. And it turned out all the experiments worked, but we were only reaching a few hundred children. There were about 1.5 million entering school that way each year. So there was a big discrepancy between what our goal was and what we were actually doing. And because I had become friends with Joan Cooney, who was a producer at Channel 13, I asked her if she thought television could be used to teach young children. She said she didn't know, but she'd like to talk about it. And that's how it began.
And I've read that you and one of your Sesame Street Workshop co-founders, Joan Cooney, watched the filming of the first episode of Sesame Street, and you turned to her and you said, Joan, we did it. What did you think you'd done at that point?
That was a preview of the television program with an audience of critics, funders, and a few other people. And based on their audience reaction, it was clear that we had done something that had wide appeal, and that's why I said that.
Did you know that 50 years later, it'd still be an institution?
We couldn't see beyond the first year. We didn't know we have a second year. So no, of course not.
Looking back, how do you feel about that?
Great. No, it's a wonderful thing that it turned out so well. We had the benefit of the work of a lot of talented people.
If you were starting from scratch, what would be the key things that you would want to teach children in Sesame Street today?
They still need the same cognitive development that we are trying to teach. They need to learn how to deal with and respect other children. They need to know that girls and boys have the same kinds of educational needs as young children. They need to be aware that other cultures have their own values. So there are a lot of things that one would want to teach, and we managed to teach some of them, but certainly not all.
So I sure appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
Thank you.
And that was Jade Hindman from Midday Edition. Finally tonight, a special honor was bestowed on someone very special to us here at KPBS. We would like to take a moment to congratulate our General Manager, Tom Carlo. At a ceremony today on the campus of San Diego State University, Mayor Kevin Faulconer sent a proclamation designating today as Thomas Carlo Day for his 46 years of service to KPBS and the San Diego community. It's an honor, well-deserved. Congratulations from all of us here at KPBS and beyond. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. We leave you tonight with music from Live at the Belly Up. It airs tonight at 11 here on KPBS. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend and a great evening.